spouses of an identical twin, what was your most embarrassing moment with the other twin? Please like, subscribe and comment so I can create more videos for you. Dated an identical twin in college. At times, they suffered from what some call single personality syndrome. They would do everything together, all decisions were made together. Even simple things. They would wake up in the morning and say, "What are we wearing today?" just giving some context for the story. As I said, I dated this girl in college, her and her sister lived together. Now, the entire time we dated, her sister was single. This, more or less, made her sister the third wheel in everything we did as a couple. It was like dating both of them without the perks of dating both of them. I know what you were thinking. One time, the three of us went on a short 4-day cruise in the Caribbean. On the ship, we kind of all did our own thing. One morning, I got up and went to the gym and the girls went to breakfast. When I got back to the room I saw, who I thought was my GF, back in the bed. Thinking we had a brief moment of alone time, I climbed in the bed, spooned up behind her, started kissing her neck, and ran my hand up her shirt. She turns her head, and to my horror, I realize that it's her sister and not my GF. I quickly backed away and said, "OMG. I am so sorry." She took it like a champ. She shrugged, smiled, and said it was bound to happen at some point. She also alluded to the fact that this might have happened before with guys that came before me. As far as I know, she never told my GF, and I sure as shit was not going to tell her. Not my most embarrassing moment, but something close. I frequent a bar every week. All the servers know me and know my husband, who doesn't come every week but comes enough that our regular waitress knows who he is. One evening, husband's identical twin brother and 8-month pregnant wife go to the bar for dinner. Cue several servers giving them some intense side eye and pretty terrible, downright rude service. Brother-in-law says something like, "Huh, that's weird, twin always says they have the best service here. Pretty sure Idol Ember comes every week," to his wife. His wife starts laughing and comments to the server, "Hey, I think you know my husband's twin and his wife, they come here every week." The service greatly improved after that. My granddad was an identical twin. He was in the Irish Army. His twin Eddie was not in the army. Eddie's daughter got a tattoo of Eddie on her leg. It's a big tattoo of him in his full army uniform. Nobody has the heart to tell her it's not her dad. This is amazing. Did she see a picture and never ask him about his army days? My mum's a twin. I've caught her waving to mirrors in clothing stores a number of times thinking her sister is also there. In my younger years, I'd often run to my auntie when I wanted to ask my mum something. Especially when she was at our house making coffee in the kitchen or something. I can totally sympathize with your mum there. I once went to a museum exhibit displaying old Victorian clothes that had been made with arsenic, mercury and so on. Went back to one display case, thinking that I had walked past a mannequin of a bearded Victorian man wearing a very outdated waistcoat, only to realize it was actually just a mirror and I had caught a glimpse of my own reflection. It was a sobering moment. A guy I work with has a twin brother who lives across the country. He took a video when he introduced his 2-year-old son to his twin brother for the first time. The moment that kid saw his uncle, his eyes just got huge and he kept looking back and forth. You could see his tiny brain explode and then he just started crying. I finally met my grandfather's twin brother the day of Grandpa's funeral. They look, sound, and acted the exact same way even though they had lived multiple states away from each other since they were 20. It was really disturbing yet oddly comforting at the same time to have him there and chat with him. A bunch of the people from my grandparents' church who were at the service were really confused. My husband and his identical twin were wearing similar clothes and they looked the same from behind. I hugged the wrong one. Awkward, but in the end not a huge deal. Seen this happen where a guy put his arm around my friend and then claimed he thought it was his girlfriend, except the two girls weren't twins. They had a different hair color, different body type, and were wearing completely different outfits. No idea how he got confused. My wife and I found out that her identical twin was a stripper when a bunch of my fraternity brothers went to the strip club and all started calling and texting me to ask if anything was wrong, and if I knew where my wife was. Did that make it awkward for your wife to be around your friends or vice versa? They've basically seen her naked now. I have twin uncles and one of their wives suggested to the other wife that they should switch beds that night and see if the twins noticed. The other wife looked at her and burst out laughing and had to explain that's not how the look-alike thing worked. When I'm over his house, I have to be very sure when I approach him from behind to hug him that I have the right one. From the back you just can't tell, lol. Not S-twin myself, but my brother and I look a lot alike. To the point, when we were in our 20s, that people mistook us for each other. I was out visiting my brother and his wife. We were getting back from a day trip and his wife said she's going to take a bath, in a way that it was obvious to me that she wanted him to join her. Well, we go inside. I start emptying the car and taking stuff back into the kitchen when I hear my sister-in-law right behind me say, "So I guess I'm taking my bath alone." I just stand there trying not to laugh before answering, "I think you have the wrong brother." She and I both burst out loud laughing. Still awkward, but it was funny. My sister and I are 4 years apart but look, act, sound really similar. During her bridal shower, she was in the bathroom and friends of hers came over and apologized for being late and asked how I was, and I didn't realize for a couple of minutes they didn't know I wasn't her. Her best friend who I know watched the whole thing and was cracking up. Many jokes were made about me wearing white on their wedding and accidentally marrying her husband. We wore red on her wedding day, lol. My brother-in-law still occasionally thinks I'm her, but only in split-second conversations and then he realizes. And usually only when we've wound up cutting our hair the same style without telling each other or putting on social media, states away. I got identical twin brothers. They were arguing and one called the other ass face. It was funny after he realized they looked the same. I taught twins. I didn't notice I was teaching twins for a month. In my defense, I can't see faces well and everyone looks the same. Elementary music teacher, have done that. Brand new middle of the year first job subbing. Was confused when the kid wouldn't respond to her name since I'd had her earlier that week. Wasn't until I saw them together at dismissal another week later I realized. Edit. Twins were in 2 different classes. I thought I'd simply gotten the same class again because I didn't know anyone yet. My mom is a twin and her poodle loves everyone. But she can't stand my mom's twin. Barks, growls, hides and bites. Only person she does this with. And my aunt is a dog person. Dogs love her. He fucked my girlfriend. He later fucked the woman I thought I wanted to marry. We haven't spoken in 5 years but he comes up in conversation a lot, like an awkward small talk when the clerk or the train ticket guy asks what brother I am and proceeds to ask how he is. Mandatory. I am not a spouse but, when I was 17 I dated one from a set of identical twin girls. Their parents were of the school of thought that one must have one of whatever the other had. So as a consequence, and completely predictable, they would pretend to be the other for fun. We were swimming at a lake near the town we lived in, and they showed up in identical bathing suits, jewelry, purses, flip-flops, towels, cell phones, watches, and food. We started swimming, and as teenagers are absolutely disgusting, started to fool around. I thought I was kissing my girlfriend when she laughed, pulled away and said, "You're right, he does use too much tongue." My budding erection vanished in embarrassment, and I was so confused I wouldn't touch either of them until they agreed to drink different beverages so I could keep track. My girlfriend wasn't mad, and in hindsight being 20/20 I should have just gone with it. But I did not. I left as soon as possible because they kept alternately teasing me, in a physical sort of way, and then changing drinks. Teenage me couldn't handle that kind of pressure. So my ex-GF and her twin shared a place. I thought my ex was in the shower. The shower had opaque doors on it so you couldn't really see who was inside the shower, but you could still see a silhouette of a woman that looked just like your girlfriend at the time. Anyway, I just got there to their home and had to use the bathroom. I rushed in, did a number 2 with all the bells and whistles. She slid open the shower door and said, "Susie, WTF are you doing?" My jaw just dropped to the ground. I was speechless. Thankfully I was done. Turns out my ex was in the backyard sitting by the pool. Wouldn't your ex react the same? I thought you need to be together for like 20 years plus to do that. My father is a twin. My mother has gotten dirty looks from strangers that know my uncle but not Daddy and my father are twins, thinking that we were some secret family. My aunt has attested to it happening to her as well. That's about it. It's pretty funny. My kids both kinda had their brains explode when they met my uncle for the first time. Not a twin. But my dad and I seem to be indistinguishable on the phone. Back when I lived at home there was a girl who was a bit stalkery and often called on the landline, no mobile phones back then, to tell me what weird sex shit she would do to me if I was there right now. Of course, one time my dad picks up the phone. She goes on and on what she would do to me, until after a good couple minutes my dad just said, "Yeah. I guess you wanted to talk to my son, right?" That was the last time she called. Thankfully. So, thanks Dad. Oh number. I once called my, now, husband at his parents' house and when he answered, I said, "Hey I, kind of flirty." Turned out it was his dad instead. Is this Kid Bartleby? Yeah. Do you want to talk to husband? Yes, please. I don't know if this counts, but my ex forgot her twin sister's birthday. I was quite impressed. My boyfriend and his brother look insanely the same. His brother will walk around in the same slouchy position my boyfriend does when I come over, and all that really happens is I take a double take. Sometimes he shits with the doors open and I blame my boyfriend, but it's him. Once I got greeted by a guy who mistook me with one of his friends. Then I met the friend. We've been calling each other brother ever since. Posted it before, my ex-wife's sister stayed with us for a few months and for some reason liked to use our bathroom in the morning to get ready. One morning I walked in thinking it was my wife, lifted the towel she had wrapped around her and smacked the shit out of her ass. It wasn't my wife. My missus and her sister have a bonfire night party for their birthday almost every year as the dates coincide. It was dark, she was facing the other way, I walked up behind her, put my arm around her waist and kissed her neck, then my missus walked out of the kitchen. Not me but someone I knew said that they have a back massage to their wife's triplet and then kissed her on the ear. In high school my BF was an identical twin. They'd do tricks at parties. Switch clothes act. It was funny if you knew the trick, or them, but everyone else was annoyed. One party me and BF's twins GF decided to get them wrong on purpose. We agreed we'd just keep going, they'd hate it, they weren't big on sharing at the best of times. We waited for the inevitable switch, and then went after them. For the first minute, they played it as they were the other, until the GF and I started to hint at a little privacy act. They stopped with that trick after that. Edit, sorry about the act. It's autocorrect cause I'm on mobile. My sister's husband is not a twin but him and his brother could pass as twins. She said when they first got together she walked into the kitchen and smacked his brother's butt thinking it was him. When I was in high school I was dating a girl who had an identical twin. The girl I dated went to public school, the twin however went to a smaller school. Every once in a while they would swap places. Well, I wasn't informed of when it was happening. Imagine my surprise when I hopped in my girlfriend's car in the morning, leaned over to kiss her and boom. It's the sister. My mother has an identical twin, my aunt obviously, so this is a story about my aunt's spouse. Apparently scent, among many other things, has a genetic component, so an oddity we discovered in my childhood is that our family dog, a cute miniature schnauzer, was completely unable to tell my mother and my aunt apart. When my aunt would come over to visit, our dog would walk in the room, look back and forth between them and just whine for a while. The world was apparently very confusing when there were two human mommies. On the plus side, this meant when we went out of town we could just leave our dog with my aunt and the dog settled in perfectly happy. The location was strange, but human mommy was there so everything was alright. Right up until my uncle tried to get in bed with his wife. Then our dog would immediately growl, bark and try to drive away the intruder with all his miniature might. My aunt thought it was hysterical, but for some reason my uncle didn't find this quite as funny. My husband doesn't have a twin, but we were at a friend's wedding and we were standing around and talking to a few people. This part is important. My husband is 6 feet 0 inches and I am 5 feet 0 inches. At this point, we had a few beers and were feeling good. Out of habit, I leaned over and put my arm around my husband's back, and leaned up against him. My husband jumped back, and it was then I realized that my husband had left the circle minutes ago and I had just hugged a different tall man. I've now learned to look up and make sure my husband is next to me before caressing his back. Yep. I'm 5 feet 0, husband is 6 feet 3 inches. A couple weeks ago I almost tried to kiss his sister because she's 5 minutes and 10 seconds and they were both wearing dark jeans and a red shirt. Once a certain height is met, I guess I just tune out the rest. Plus, they both have long slim athletic builds so it's hard. Not me, but my uncle and father. They were playing tag and my father was running from my uncle. My father came across a mirror and ran for his life thinking that was his brother, my uncle. They have the best of stories but this is the only one I remember. I haven't had anything embarrassing happen yet, but the answers here are definitely making me fucking paranoid. My wife is not a twin, but her sister is only 11 months younger than her. They look really similar, and for about 5 years had a nearly identical haircut. The three of us drove up to the lake cabin that we were having a family vacation at, and the rest of the family was due to arrive in a few hours. I volunteered to unload the car, while my wife and her sister were changing into swimsuits to go hang out at the lake shore. I didn't know which room was going to be ours, and which was going to be her sister's, so I just took a guess. Quietly walked in with a few bags and there was what I thought was my wife, putting on her bikini top, but turned away from me. She dropped her bottoms, and bent over to pick them up. I got a perfect view of a completely shaved vagina and ass. I made a "were you shaved?" exclamation, and she yelped, turned around and it was my sister-in-law. She quickly ran into the bathroom and was laughing as she realized the mistake I had made. So I've seen my sister-in-law's entire undercarriage. Thankfully my wife is pretty understanding. Not a spouse but so. Briefly dated a twin when I was in my early 20s. She lived with her sister. I slept with the sister. Unknowingly. I was over, waiting for the GF to stop by. The sister let me in and then left. Well, she left, then came back, announcing she was my GF. Very early on into the relationship and we had a very good time. She left soon after because work called. I had to go in. Needless to say, when my GF actually got home, I figured it out. Sexy times ensued again. I kept the secret. We broke up soon after. Unrelated, sister immediately started texting me. So there's that. Which one was better? My guess is the slutty trickster, or rapist if you prefer. Oh my gosh, let me tell you. This is a long one, so please bear with me. So, first off, I almost never mistake them. To me, they look completely different, and I know mine is the one with the attractively shaped head. However, maybe once or twice in the past, I got mixed up. The worst time happened in the school library freshman year of college. I had been dating my guy, who we'll call Brent, for 4 months. His identical twin, Ron, had been dating this girl Sarah for just a couple weeks. I'm walking into the library to meet Brent for dinner when I run into Sarah. We say hi, have a chat, and just as she's turning to leave she mentions that she saw my guy in the second floor computer labs. So I head up the stairs and see Brent sitting at one of the computers, when all of a sudden I'm hit with a revelation. Brent is not nearly as good looking as I remembered. I get a bit of a sinking feeling, and as I get closer, my fears are confirmed. I am no longer attracted to Brent. His skin seems more olive in hue, his haircut is strange, and his head is oddly asymmetric. 4 months is a long time, and I figured the fire had died in me since I saw him last. But whatever, I tell myself to suck it up. Brent is a great guy, and I shouldn't be so shallow. Looks aren't everything, right? Brent sees me and I give him a little wave, and he kind of just stares back at me? Weird. I pull up a chair and start talking with him about his day, being all friendly and girlfriend-like, but Brent is giving me nothing in return. All of his answers are short, and he seems almost confused by our interaction. He also doesn't seem to remember that I had a big test that day, that I had been stressing about all month, because he didn't even ask how it went. I start to get a little upset. Sure, I can handle dating a guy with a potato head, but not a guy who can't engage with me socially. I figure maybe he's having a bad day, so I ask if he wants to go for a walk around the library. He say, I guess, but that's kind of weird. At that response I think WTF, Brent. We've been dating for 4 months, this is not a weird thing to do together. I decide I need a second to collect myself, because his behavior is really off-putting. I tell him I'm going to return a book on the first floor. And so, I do what any girlfriend would do when she's about to leave. I put my hand on his knee and kind of lean in for a kiss. Brent's eyes go big and he starts slowly leaning away from me. I stop and have a second horrible revelation. In high school I dated a guy who happened to be gay. He didn't really know it yet, but I figured it out when I went to kiss him and he leaned away from me. Just like Brent did. Oh god. I am very flustered at this point, so I get up and immediately head downstairs. This is all just too much for me. In 10 minutes I went from dating a great man to having to break up with a socially awkward, potentially gay, man with a misshapen head. I am lamenting my terrible position when I see Ron sitting in a chair on the first floor. He's reclining with a book in his hand, leisurely leaning back and stretching out his long legs. A whispered thought crossed my mind. Ron looks really good today. I shake it off, and decided to talk with him. Maybe something happened to Brent that I don't know about. Maybe Brent is upset about something, and that's why he's being so quiet. Or maybe he was hit in the head with a baseball, and that's why his personality is different and the left side of his head is a little flatter than the right. Ron sees me and enthusiastically says hello. Now, I don't remember exactly what happened next, but we started talking. I remember thinking how much easier it was to talk with Ron, and wondering why Brent wasn't like that. At some point I mention that Brent is on the second floor. Ron suddenly looks confused. He stops and says, "But I'm Brent." I look at him and laugh. I think, how can that possibly be? Ha ha ha, wait, oh my god. That's when I have my third horrible revelation. I swear, what happened next was like a special effect in a movie. Ron's face almost transforms in front of me. His cheekbones come into clearer focus, his eyes become rounder, peachiness returns to his cheeks, and his forehead becomes a nicely formed rectangle. I think I had been mentally overlaying Ron's features onto Brent's face, allowing my eyes to trick my mind into believing the eye was seeing what I thought I was seeing. I realized that this Ron was actually my Brent, and that Sarah had mistakenly told me my guy was on the second floor. I started laughing, because I couldn't believe what just happened. I told Brent all about the strange conversation I had with Ron, when I suddenly remembered that I had tried to kiss him. Oops. I got up and ran to the second floor to see Ron. He was standing in the computer lab, bag in hand, ready to go on the most uncomfortable walk with his brother's crazy girlfriend. Ron looked a little nervous and he said that he was willing to go on a walk with, but that he'd prefer to stay in the school's library, presumably because there were many people who could help him if I tried any more moves. I laughed, and said, I have a boyfriend, and left. Anyway, Brent and I just got engaged, and I haven't confused them since. Side note, Ron and I are best friends, and I did eventually explain what happened. I like to mess with him though, because he's technically Ron's younger brother. Ron recently married my best friend and college roommate, and Brent and I were their best man and maid of honor. Ron and his wife will be the peeps of honor for our wedding as well. Edit, spelling, TLDR. Thought my boyfriend's brother was my boyfriend. Had awkward conversation, found him unattractive, attempted romantic library smooching, and questioned his sexuality. Then found real boyfriend. The end. I casually dated an identical twin. The two of them were so similar that they were able, by switching hairstyles, which were pretty similar anyway, even fool their mother. Anyway, I had no problem telling them apart, and mine was the cuter one, in my eyes. But I was in my early 20s, so I probably tried to kiss the wrong one by accident about 30 times. I was not a good person when I was younger. Just wanna give some cred to OP for a good AskReddit subject. Hope this one gets some interesting replies. I posted this last week in another thread, but it fits better here. One time we went to play laser tag, seniors in high school. I was on a different team than both my GF and her twin sister. I ran up behind the twin, turned her around, picked her up by her ass and kissed her. Whoops. She and I never mentioned it to anyone. There was definitely a point where I realized it was the wrong twin, and that point came before